Hi there, even if your drone doesn't have a zoom lens, you can still create this trippy vertigo effect by using a combination of drone movement and some easy keyframing in DAVINCI Resolve. First, record yourself or your subject while flying the drone backwards away from you. Start with the drone close to the person. Getting the focus and the depth of field right can be a bit tricky because you want to keep the person in focus for as long as possible as the drone's moving away from them. On a fixed aperture drone like the DJI Mini 3 Pro that I shot this footage on, not only is it a fixed aperture, but it's also quite a wide aperture, so it can be tricky to get a wide depth of field if you're focused close to the subject at the start. To help with this, what I suggest is you switch over to manual focus and turn on focus peaking, just so you can see what's actually in focus, and then just experiment with moving the drone away and trying to keep that depth of field as big as possible and the person within that depth of field of focus. If you have a drone where you can actually change the aperture, set a narrower aperture just so you've got a bigger depth of field, which is going to help keep the person in focus for longer. Then just bring the footage into DAVINCI Resolve. Here we've got an unedited clip of the drone flying backwards from me, and I've already trimmed the start of this clip to where the drone starts moving backwards. Next we're going to add a digital zoom in, so come up to the inspector. You can use the zoom X and zoom Y controls here if you want to, but we're actually going to use a slightly different method. It's going to give us a little bit of secret sauce to just try and make the effect a bit smoother. I'll show you what that is in just a second. What you want to do is come over to the effects here and just open up the effects tab, and under open effects click the search box and search for transform. Drag this Resolve Effects transform effect on top of your drone clip. If you've got a newer version of Resolve, it automatically switches to the effects tab here, but you can switch yourself by just clicking on effects, and if you don't see this inspector you can toggle it on and off here. Make sure that your clip is selected and your playhead's at the start of the clip, and then click this little button here to set a starting keyframe for the zoom. Next you want to scroll through your clip to find a point where you want the digital zoom to end. You can now go and drag this zoom slider to zoom in to create the look you want. We're going to go for quite a big digital zoom of about 2.6. Exactly where you decide to place this keyframe is going to depend on how in focus the person is as the drone's moving backwards. So here we're pushing it a bit because you can see we've kind of lost focus on myself here. And here's where the secret sauce comes in. If you open up animation, and you can increase the motion blur. I'd suggest starting about halfway and see how that looks, and just as the digital zoom is zooming in, it's going to add a tiny bit of blur just to try and sell that effect a bit more. You can't do this using the built-in zoom control here because there's no motion blur that you can add here. That's why we're using this transform effect. If you want to actually visualize the keyframes, you can click this button to open up the keyframes and then select the transform zoom parameter, and you can see here we're zooming in as the clip plays. If I play this back now, you can see we get the trippy vertigo effect. I'm going to share an extra thing you can do in a minute to make this effect even more trippy, but first I want to share with you 3 quick tips. The first is to experiment and do multiple takes with the drone moving away from you at different speeds. That will give you a few different options when you come to edit the footage. The clip that we're working with here had the drone moving away quite slowly actually. The second tip is to experiment with different amounts of digital zoom and different keyframe positions, and the third tip is to make sure you record your video at the highest resolution that your drone can record in. Because of that digital zoom we're adding, we're going to lose some resolution as that digital zoom works its way in the editing. By the way, this channel is all about making better looking, better sounding and better edited video. If that's something useful to you, please subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Okay, to make this effect even more trippy, bring the playhead to the start of the clip, and under the effects here, search for lens distortion. Drag the lens distortion effect onto the clip. Come over to the sliders here under lens distortion and just change this so we're starting off about the 0.24 mark. We're going to keyframe this effect as well to enhance that warpiness. Come over here and click this button to add a keyframe for the amount of distortion, and then drag the playhead to where your zoom in ends, and then you're going to want to change the amount of distortion. This will automatically add a keyframe, so we're going to really warp this just so you can see the effect. You might not want to make it this strong. All right, let's have a look at this full screen. I'll just play this back, and you can see we've got the Dolly-Zoom, and we're also really warping the edges now with that extra effect to make it look pretty trippy. Check out this playlist next to really power up your DAVINCI Resolve editing skills. I'm Jason Roberts. Please subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.